Good morning. Welcome to St. John in the Wilderness for formation today. It's, let's see, the 15th. Oh boy, it's on automatic. Wasn't ready for that. Okay. I'm going to also welcome our online viewers because we're streaming formation. We've got a system to do that, so welcome to those who are joining us online. It's good to be with you guys. And we could use a few more people to do that on Sundays. It's training for maybe an hour, and then hopefully you'll be able to set it up and then just participate like Tom Griswold's doing today. So if you'd like to get trained for that and rotate in, then that would be wonderful. Today we're going to talk about a recent pilgrimage that we took as a church. There was a group of us that went to Montreal and to Quebec City to learn about the history of the church there, learn about First Nations peoples, a number of things. We had some good companions on the way that we'll share with you this morning. The group of pilgrims that went on the trip, most of them anyway, even Elizabeth is here. They're right over here. So they're I thought you were going to be in choir, but yeah, they're all here. And you all just please add your memories and your, what you'll take with you and as you see the pictures too. And for the rest of you, feel free to ask questions as we share a little bit of this story. Does that sound good? Okay, so we made it to the Charlotte airport. Some of us stayed the night ahead of time. Some of us got up real early. And the funny story there was that, I brought my bike with me because I was going to stay for a few days to bike. So I had a bike, I had a suitcase, a carry-on, and a backpack. And when I got all unloaded from the long-term parking shuttle and I was walking into the terminal, I definitely did not have my carry-on, which had all my clothes on it. So I left it on the bus. Yeah, on the terminal bus. And so I went and, I realized, well, let me just check into my flight and all that, and then I'll go back out. And I went out and they radioed to each other, and immediately they showed up and said, "Here you go." So I was like, yes, Lord. The trip was going to go two different ways right then and there from the first hour. And so, yeah, it was really, really nice when they just, the bus driver even walked out and said, "Here you go." They were awesome. Really good. I just had great experience with the employees there. Even some of the interactions that are not always so fun. They were all good. So here's the group as we got past security, I think, and we were getting ready to load up on the plane. And that's in Montreal. And we arrived to a rainy day in Montreal, but we still got out and kind of walked around, and our hotel was right by the St. Lawrence River, and it was in the Old Port section of Montreal. And I might look to a few of you for pronunciation that's proper. So Guy and Karen, you can help us with that. So that was fun. The first companion that we had that was really neat to get to know better, and someone that will be part of your journey if you hear a little bit about him today, is this fellow right here. This is Saint Brother Andre Bisset. So this is Brother Andre is how he's often known, and his story in Montreal is a fascinating one. He grew up in Quebec and had an active religious life and everything. And eventually he thought, after he tried working in some factories in New England, he said, I think I feel called to be a brother, to be a monastic. He wasn't very well educated, but he wound up becoming a monk, and he was working at this seminary. It's a school now, as like the doorman. So he was the doorman. That was his ministry, to welcome people in and to unlock the doors and all of that. And the story goes that this is him. He's actually pictured with keys in this one. The story goes that people, he had a real gentle way about him, and that people in the late 1800s or the mid 1800s, they would let him know what was going on in their lives as they came in. They'd say, "Oh, Brother Andre, can you pray for my mom? She's not well." Or, we're having a really tough time. One of our kids is sick. Can you pray for him, please? And he had a huge passion for St. Joseph, and he would often say, "Oh, well, we'll ask St. Joseph to heal them." So he did this for like decades. And people in the community started to notice that if Brother Andre prayed for your loved one, then something good tended to happen. So he was, over time, became understood to be this holy person. And he had a vision that he wanted to build a shrine to St. Joseph. And so like in his 60s, when, this community that had acknowledged him, he's not well educated, he's not a priest, he's just this humble guy. This community said, okay, fine, you can build it. This is him older in life. And so he went over and he used his savings and he built this little shrine, this small chapel, kind of like our original chapel, a small space for St. Joseph. Well, today it's a little different. So the small shrine you can't see, it's behind, it's still there, but this is now St. Joseph's Oratory, which is the largest shrine to St. Joseph in the world. And St. Joseph is the patron saint of Canada. And so pilgrims will sometimes climb up the middle stairs on their knees as they offer their prayers and their petitions. So that was our first stop, St. Joseph's Oratory, this beautiful cathedral-like church. I guess it's technically, I think it's a basilica. Yeah, it's a basilica of St. Joseph's Oratory, yeah. You want to tell us what it's called in French, Guy? Okay, so that's what the locals know it as. And we made our way up there, and the first thing on the landing, right before you go in, this piece of artwork was just stunning. So we spent a good amount of time looking at this sculpture. So I wanted to share this with you. This is.
Figures are all life-size or near life.
Yeah, this is large. This is life. They're like life-size, and you can see that they're on a boat. And you can see like there's a pregnant woman there. This person looks like a Hasidic Jew, maybe Orthodox Jew.
And no timeline per se.
Oh yeah.
From slavery and up.
In modern times, yeah, there's lots of different times their dress would show.
Do you know how many individuals are featured in that?
It'd be really hard to count, but like dozens, yeah. And there's children, you can see children, there's little girls on the right there.
And this is on the grounds of the oratory.
Yeah, this is like, when you walk up the steps, before you go in, there's a huge viewing point of the city, a good view, and this is central to it.
The building is built on the highest point of land on the island of Montreal.
Okay, yeah, so it's built, the mountain was part of the attraction for Brother Andre. So you can see a little mouse on this right here. Yeah.
Mickey or Minnie.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time with this. You can see workers, all kinds of different folks. And so this is the name of it.
So the description is a reference to the biblical story that is the lesson that it's important to take in those who are traveling or immigrants because you never know if you might entertain angels unaware.
Yeah, so show hospitality to strangers, right? It says in Hebrews.
Somewhere in the middle of the crowd there are angels' wings coming.
Yeah, you see that? Yeah, so this was kind of a neat way actually of framing, going there and thinking about us as strangers and traveling, and then also a part of Canada's history, where at least in recent years, the way that I think the media, at least, and the government has understood Canada's relationship to immigrants has been a lot different than what we've seen in the U.S. in terms of the conversation. And as people of faith, too, that's really something to wrestle with. So this is the inside of St. Joseph's Oratory. Some of these I took offline because I realized my pictures weren't quite, good enough to capture some of it. So it's very modern space, and there's several layers of it. There's several different chapels and This is the main worship space.
It was only fully completed in 1967.
1967, yeah. And it was started, I'm trying to remember, the first shrine was started in, was it around, what year was it? To remember my dates.
I would guess around the 1920s.
Yeah, maybe something like that, early 1900s. When Brother Andre died, 2 million people came to pay their respects. Yeah, which was around then. It was around towards the end of his life. So part of the neat thing of going there was to think about St. Joseph more deeply, because as you are well aware, he's not the most talked about person in the scriptures or in the church, So for us, for Protestant Christians, Jesus is the focus, and in the Roman tradition, of course, Mary gets a lot of attention. But St. Joseph is a really neat figure, and he's the patron saint of like foster parents, adoptive parents, laborers. There's laborers that are connected. So we got to see some portrayals of him that showed him, that really celebrated fatherhood, which was really moving. And I think I've got another one of those in there. These were these huge wooden carvings that are on the walls, and these are the apostles. So we try to figure out who's who, And this one was one of the most interesting, the one in the middle. And we spent some time trying to figure out, anybody know? Any guesses who that is? I thought it might be. If you look back, you see, what do you see? What do you see here besides the two heads? You got symbols here. Yeah, so you have an upside-down cross, and you have the cock crow, so it's Peter, who was crucified on an upside-down cross because he didn't feel worthy of one like Jesus. And then the other one is Paul, because in Scripture they're kind of in tension with each other, but they're also part of the same mission. So the early church is working out, is it Peter, is it Paul, who's explaining this thing right? And you see that in the Gospels if you read carefully, and in the Acts of the Apostles, for example. Isn't that cool? Here's another one, again, Joseph teaching Jesus how to be a carpenter. And here we have a few more. These are really neat. So who knows the middle one there? Who's that? That's the cross of St. Andrew. X. The X right here is the cross. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard to see it. Yeah. And some beautiful artwork throughout. So, anybody want to translate that for us?
Protector of the universal church, role model for workers, patron saint of...
Like artisans?
I don't know that last word. I was going to say that. Yeah, that's what it is.
Maybe artisans was my guess, but I don't know if we're reading French or Latin. This is real striking. Is you have in this place and in some of the other ones you have crutches lined up from that people left there, as gifts being healed. So again, this is underneath where there's a chapel and where Brother Andre is buried. And one of the special parts of this oratory is the garden with these huge, larger-than-life Stations of the Cross. And I think all of us were really moved by these. We spent a lot of time out there. So this one, you all know what this is not usually part of the stations, but what is it? That is Jesus. And you could see over here there's a couple of disciples who are warming themselves and kind of, maybe nodding off, actually. So that's Gethsemane in the garden. Jesus falls down. I thought this one was really striking. So I won't show you all of those. That's another one of the Jesus being nailed to the cross. Mary receives the body of Jesus. That's the 13th station, maybe? And then there's a beautiful fountain out there with the Lamb of God, which is an image from Revelation. So kind of a complete of the stations. That's that first one. So our next stop after St. Joseph's Oratory, did y'all want to add anything to that? I know there's a lot to, yeah, try to get through it. We went to the Holocaust Memorial Museum of Montreal because Montreal has the largest number of Holocaust survivors other than New York and Israel in the world. So there's a huge Jewish community there, and it was really powerful. It was very humbling to spend time there. Our tour guide here, does anybody remember her name? Anne. Her grandfather was killed in the Holocaust, and they had already moved to Canada in like the 20s, but he was back there on a trip when he got caught up in it. And so she gives tours, and she really like told the story of, we didn't have to read much because she was so thorough. It was really helpful. And we also, while we were there, we got to sit down with a Holocaust survivor as well. A man named, Elie Doeng? Yeah. And he was 5 years old in France when the war started. So he was born in 1935, 1934. And he ended up... in France, we don't talk about this a lot, but there was a lot of collaboration with the Nazis, some of it forced, but some of it not forced. And his parents both ended up being shipped east. He never saw his mom again. And his dad was one of 20 people out of 1,100 that went east on that train, and 20 of them came back alive. And so he survived because a neighbor just took him in kind of reluctantly, kind of graciously at the same time. And they ended up getting to the south of France and just surviving. And his dad was able to find him in school when he was like 10 years old. Yeah, and they immigrated to Canada shortly thereafter.
Is that how you got to talk to him?
Yeah, he sat down with us for an hour and just opened up his whole heart to us and shared the story with us.
You can ask when you visit the Holocaust Memorial in Montreal, you can ask to be assigned an interview. But very few people left that are capable of doing this, obviously given the passage of time.
Yeah.
But we asked for an interview.
Yeah, it was really just an honor and very difficult and powerful, and it led to some good conversations, as you can imagine, thinking about who we are and what happened and all those things. Our next stop was at Notre Dame de Montreal, which, sorry, a little bit out of order. I tried to get all these in order, but without making this a really intensive planning thing, it ended up, this is the best I could do. It's pretty good. I thought I had more in here about that. So this talks about the world response as well, which, as you all know, the American response was not great in the face of this, right? So,
Nor was the Canadian.
nor was the Canadian response.
National change on that level as well.
Yeah, and so, you think about the sculpture we saw in front of St. Joseph's Oratory, and you go to the Holocaust Museum, and you think about like boats being turned away, right? So, collaborators as well with the Third Reich, and then anti-Semitism in Canada. So we learned about that. Okay, and then this is Notre Dame de Montreal, and they say if you go to Montreal and you don't see the inside of Notre Dame, then you haven't visited. So it's kind of like the National Cathedral of Canada. So a lot of prime ministers have been buried out of there or married there, or the last one buried it there was just a few years ago. Brian Mulroney.
Celine Dion was married here too.
So it looks very traditional, and then you go inside. There's Mary. And unlike a lot of the other churches, this one, the outside was finished in a couple decades, but the woodwork, these are all carvings, and they took a long time to finish. So it really celebrates the artisans of Quebec and Canada and the timber industry and all of that. This is all carved and painted wood. Incredible.
And it's a little bit disconcerting when you go during the day because everyone treats it like a museum. It's not, it doesn't feel like a quiet, contemplative place. It's a little bit of a Disneyland.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tourist situation, which some of y'all have experienced, right? And you travel. But you can definitely find the sacred there. This is Mary with Jesus with a maple leaf. I'm not sure that ever happened, but hey.
Anachronism.
And we learned about,
Into art.
yeah, exactly. We learned about a lot of these figures. So this one is Saint Marguerite Bourgeois, who was the founder of the cathedral and who was an early teacher of First Nations peoples there. This was under the pulpit.
Ezekiel and Jeremiah.
You had the 4 major prophets. There's Jeremiah. All wood. That's the pulpit. Which they don't preach from anymore, and I'm like, why not? If you had that pulpit, you better preach from it.
They used to do it there first because it was kind of in the center of the building.
And the sound.
It was amazing how it carried. But later, when it got bigger, they moved it to
And they added speakers. So before speakers, then the wood, it all worked from the construction. Here's the altar, this is the altar where the Eucharist is celebrated, and you have a carving of the Last Supper. Really beautiful. And then up on the reredos, you have images of sacrifice in the scriptures. That's Melchizedek. You gotta go back to Genesis if you want to hang out with Melchizedek. I'm not going to tell you. That's Moses with horns of light, which is from the Vulgate mistranslation.
Are the colors that, what we're seeing?
I mean, they're better than what you're seeing, yeah.
It's illuminated.
It's
Part of it, yep. Yep.
Also illuminated somehow, or is it just that vivid?
I think it's light and paint, yeah.
I think it's also colored light.
Yep.
And the color.
And then back behind it is my favorite spot. There is the Chapel of the Sacred Heart, which is very different, like a very modern kind of space. And they have some Stations of the Cross carvings on that. These are just a couple of them. And then they had this really large, like larger than life size carving of Jesus being arrested and turned over. You could spend some time with that. Yeah. The bronze altarpiece is this work by a Quebecois sculptor, Charles, I don't know, you want to say it, Guy?
I can't see.
Charles Daudoulin. And so he died in 2001. And it celebrates the work of the Jesuit priest. It's this altar on the left, Teilhard de Chardin. So it's really stunning, and it kind of, all of creation, Teilhard de Chardin believed that creation was evolving towards God, which got him like excommunicated by the Roman Church. But here he is as part of this Roman Church. So yeah, really neat. It has, at the top, you kind of have Jesus, returning to bring all things to God, and creation's like moving towards God. Really cool place quiet. And the back chapel is quiet, and you pretty well, people respected the rules back there, so you could pray and you could, they do services back there during the week that you could go to. We stumbled upon this in the river by our hotel, Red Bull cliff diving event. So they were diving off of like 21 meter and 27 meter platforms. That was pretty cool. See, somebody's up there. So yeah, we decided to watch that for an hour or two. Yeah, so I've jumped off some high stuff in my life, and I walked up there, and the first one I was like, "Yeah, maybe I would have done that one." This higher one, I was like, that is terrifying. Terrifying. It was the way it was set up is you could kind of walk next to it on a part of the port. Yeah. I did, I thought about it. I was like, so I'd have to run up that, and yeah. And then we went back for a light show at the cathedral. At Montreal, Notre Dame de Montreal. This doesn't quite capture it. You couldn't take photos. They were really good about this, actually, because there were like 2,000 people in there, and they must make a ton of money on it. But they do a whole light show with sound, and it's in the cathedral. It's really beautiful, and like it's very much a tourist attraction. Yeah, so I mean, it was a cool experience. It's very well done, and I'm glad we went. But I probably wouldn't go back anytime soon. At the same time, because it's kind of odd if you're a person of faith to be in there. And I think they could have done a little better job of even using it as evangelism if they wanted to.
Was the music kind of off or something?
No, some of it was classical and some of it was even church music, but then it morphed into more modern kind of electronic pop, and then there were lasers at the end. It was breathtaking, but it was definitely not religious.
This was out front of the hotel on Saturday. So there was a huge colonial fair going on. It was amazing because of this museum there. So we got to stumble upon that. This was in Trois-Rivières, which is a little town on the way to Quebec City, where there's a big boat. Yeah. And we like big boats because they're cool to look at. And this is Quebec City. I didn't take that picture, as you might guess. So we arrived at Quebec City, and
We did not stay at the Chateau.
yeah, we didn't stay there. Yeah. That's a 5-star hotel that was built by the railroad barons in the late 1800s. It's very nice. And then we walked around, and the streets of Quebec City are just lovely to walk through. The flowers in the windows, the cobblestone. This is actually a mural that shows like famous people of Quebec, like over the centuries. Yeah, I can't quite capture it. This is the Sailors' Church?
Notre Dame des Victoires, at the church closest to the port.
This section of town is called Petit Champlain, right? So if you happen to go to Montreal and you want to see, the more interesting areas and not just, ordinary streets and so on, you probably want to head to that section, as well as view Montreal.
This is Quebec.
Oh,
City.
Quebec,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah.
All right, I'm
We
in the
stayed
wrong
in the
town,
old-
but anyway, keep that in mind.
Yep.
So,
Yes, thank you.
yeah.
In our experience, Quebec City is the most European-ish
Yes.
city on this continent.
Very European.
I agree with that.
So here's the square below the chateau there. So some amazing sculptures. This is Holy Trinity Cathedral, Anglican Cathedral there, which is the first cathedral outside of the British Isles. We went to church there Sunday morning, which was really nice. And this is the inside of it. It felt good to be back on home soil in a way.
Was it more the size of like St. James and Asheville?
It was smaller than that. A little bit smaller. A little bit. Yeah, but similar.
Well, it is an English language church in a very francophone area.
Yeah, so it's from 1800. And they have silver that was a gift from King George III, which is stunning that you get to see. That's some of the finest silver ever made.
Very welcoming conversation.
Yeah.
We went twice, second time was Evensong that night.
Yeah, we went back for Evensong. We were like, yes, please. This was a really cool sculpture as well, similar to some other themes that we came up upon outside the cathedral and the close of the cathedral. So there it is from one angle, a traveler, backpack, weary. Yep.
Yeah, we were just there.
So you could sit next to this traveler.
It was very pleasant.
It was downright hot one of the 2 days.
And we ate really well for dinners, very well. This was at a restaurant that had like First Nations dishes, you know, so you could order caribou or bison, fish, you know, really neat. That was actually a lunch. That's Quebec City. This, oh yeah, this is one I pulled from online, sorry. It's the Ursuline School there, which we toured. And this is the school that was set up. The Jesuits came over, you know, in the 1600s, and they were educating the boys. And then the Ursulines are these nuns that came over to educate the girls. And they are pretty remarkable in a lot of ways. So we got a tour of this.
Lovely going.
Yeah. Marie of the Incarnation was one that we learned a lot about, who was an early Ursuline teacher there. The bells are tolling for me.
What about the First Nation? You said something about them, First Nation?
They were educated initially by the Ursuline nuns.
Okay.
And after several attempts at different methods, they finally discovered that culturally it was not making sense for these girls to be taken away from their families.
They tried for like a century, and then they kind of said, you know, it's not really working. But it wasn't a residential school. It was before.
No, it was not a government,
It
it
was-
was not where they were taken forcibly out.
Yeah, this was before that became policy.
But at a time when only very wealthy young women would have been educated, they were educating any girls that cared to go to school, which was really significant.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but this was a nice park we went to called Cartier-Brébeuf,
Cartier-Brébeuf, yeah.
which is where Jacques Cartier landed and spent his first winter there in like 1608.
With the help of the local Iroquois.
We went to the Montmorency Falls next. This beautiful large waterfall that I talked about in my sermon last week, which was really cool.
Higher than Niagara, I believe.
Yep,
right?
yes. Yep, there's a good one for the Christmas card. All right, sorry. I'm gonna keep moving. This was the Museum of Civilizations, and this was really cool to see. The First Nations exhibit here was beautiful. So these are all different types of snowshoes. Look at that. So they captured the story and the history really well. You know, hunting out of canoes and kayaks. And this one was particularly powerful. It was a piece of modern art called God Was a Victim Too. And it showed, this was about residential schools. And this shows a native boy photographed, you know, in his traditional dress and hair, and then what the school made him into in the name of God. There was also an exhibit on wrestling.
That's Andre and John, if you don't know.
And then this was the last stop we made, and I'm going to have to wrap up here. But this was Saint-Anne-du-Beaupré.
This was my favorite place.
Yeah, this
It-
is...
It really had a lovely sort of relaxed feel. In, most of the cathedrals, you get a little bit of an ultra-formal and stern sort of feel. This, I think, was very welcoming, very religious in the sense of comforting and
It felt like a church, yeah.
openness. Yeah.
It felt like a church even though it was very popular.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was easy to, it was quiet, it was, yeah. These,
Every detail, we had a guided tour, and every detail had a particular meaning. There were references to the local flora and fauna in every carving, in every mosaic, in every stained glass. It's really extraordinary.
this is the entryway that I talked about in my sermon last week. You saw some of these pictures.
I like the one with the typewriter and the telephone.
There's God the Father.
Yep, right there.
All right, well, I'm having a lot of fun. There's God the Holy Spirit as a phoenix. See, I didn't make it all up. And then that's the inside of it.
It's an incredible place.
Yeah, it was really special. I've got to run across the street. A lot of you all do too, I can tell. David, you can come and hit the button and flip through. But thank you guys, and we look forward to next week. We'll be back in formation as we look at the prayer book a little bit more, okay? Thank you all.